So you'd meet up in a car park or something and swap one game for another. I only did that 2 or 3 times. But
Big Max, shady hat.
Yeah. A bit like, yeah. I'm still doing it now. But without the games. But yeah.
Greetings, YouTube. Welcome to Sunaru Gaming. I'm Slyelessar. Joining me today is author of New Earth Fanzine, Graham Pike. Hi, Graham.
Hi, good evening.
Brilliant. This is a special chat. This one's specifically about the New Earth Fanzine, and about 20 minutes in, or thereabouts, we're going to be joined by Neo Geo Collector Frazer Rhodes. And we've got some questions for Frazer, and I've got some for Graham. And I suppose I'll kick it off with, when did you first have the idea about starting up New Earth? How did it come about?
Well, I always liked writing about my interests, although nothing as good as a fanzine or anything. I just like writing stuff, and I had this. When I first got into Neo Geo, there's a little bit of a small swapping scene because those days, even back in those days, the games were expensive. When like I don't know, a Mega Drive game was 25 quid, they were Neo Geo game was 75 quid or 80 or 100 or whatever. So there was a swapping scene. So I used to meet with the odd person. So I started off this thing called like Neo Geo Northwest. It was just like 4 sides of just writing about games. But it only did about 3 or 4. I didn't even distribute them. I just wrote it out, printed it up, or typed it out and everything. But nothing really came of it. It was something I wanted to do. But anyway, I was back in those days, pre-internet days, really. I had most of my information came from about Neo Geo. That is, came from apart from the ordinary magazines, but even like CVG and Mean Machines and Games, they were good little magazines. But Neo Geo was always like, you were lucky if you got a couple of one page in it or something. So most of my day was ringing. There were specialist dealers around the country, all up in Scotland or down south or whatever. And you'd ring them up and you'd be chatting for like half an hour on the phone, just talking about what's happening now, because the people that do them were usually enthusiasts as well, Neo Geo anyway. So, and I was ringing one. I've been trying. I can't remember the name of it was up in Thurso in north, right at the north of Scotland. I think it was KT Consoles. Consoles started with a K. I think KT Consoles. I think it was them. Frazer would probably know better than me because he's still got like advertisements and stuff like that from those days. And so I was talking to them. And even though we were right in North Scotland, he had a southern accent at the time. Anyway, the guy around was very pleasant. We were just chin wagging, and I must have mentioned things, and he said, "Why don't you start a fanzine? Because nobody else doing it." I thought, yeah, why not? He said, "We'd be interested in, if you want to send some up." So I thought, yeah, go. Yeah, so then I just started the idea of how I was going to do it, and as it was all very primitive. I didn't have a PC or anything. I mean, I don't know what PCs were even available back in 1994, because that's when I first started the fanzine. So I didn't have a PC or anything. So basically, I had an electronic typewriter, and I just get what artwork I could do. Sometimes it'd just be from the game manuals, or if I saw anything from magazines that I could cut out. So basically, it was really a simplistic affair of getting an A4 sheet of paper. Once I'd sort of written out what the review was or whatever the article was, find some sort of appropriate artwork, stick it on the A4 sheet of paper, and literally type round it, sort of type a line, just make sure I didn't go over the thing. And then I didn't have like wrap around or anything like that. It was all just simple stuff. But I managed to make it look reasonable, and obviously as I went on, I got more proficient at making it better, and more artwork came my way. I'm not sure how many years later on from when I started, but I was in London. I went into the Japan Centre. Either I spotted or I mentioned Neo Geo, and there was the only sort of good quality magazine at the time that I knew about, or they knew about, was called Neo Geo Freak. And they said, yeah, they could get it for me on if I paid for like a year, they'd send it to me monthly. So I paid them for a year, and they sent me one a month. So that gave me a lot more access to black and white art. And even though it was all in Japanese and I can't read Japanese, you could tell from the pictures, and obviously they still used English titles and the odd word in English, so you could see what was coming out, see good screenshots of it. Plus, I could get black and white artwork. Obviously, again, that helped with my fanzine, that's the whole reason I got the Neo Geo was to help with the fanzine, and obviously just my general interest. And so once that came on, so I think Frazer has got every single Neo Geo fleet that came out. I don't think it ran for that long. It's just a few years. I think I only had it for 2 years. Back to your original question, that's how it started. An idea. I managed to find there's Raven Games. That's where I very first found out about the Neo Geo back in 91 or 92, wherever it was, 91, I think. Yeah, it was 91 because I think I got the Mega Drive in 90 and then the Neo Geo not long afterwards. And yeah, they said they'd do it. So I think I sent it to 3 different shops. So I started sending it out, and then I also made it available on subscription. Basically, I didn't want to try and make any money out of it. I just anybody wanted me. I just get them to send me stamps, and I'd send it to them. So I never had more than like 20 people on subscription, and then the ones that I sent out to the shops. What was really good about it was people started writing to me, old-fashioned snail mail letters, sending it, asking questions. Did I have? Sometimes I'd send them because I don't know how, but as you go along, you often pick up bits of leaflets and all sorts of advertising stuff. Just from this country, I never sent away to Japan for it. That's pretty much how it started off, really, and I managed to keep it going.
How long was the average writing process? Because obviously, you have to play through the games before you can write about them.
So I'd usually get the game, sort of write down my initial thoughts on it, and then just play it. Because normally when you got a new game, you just played it, as much as you could. I had a fair amount of spare time to play, so I played a lot. So I probably played it for quite a few hours. I don't know, 20, 30, 40 hours of play, and then I'd do the write-up. Part of the scoring system was lastability, and and that's something you can't really tell straight away. You have to sort of played it for a while. There were certain games that they just went above and beyond what you're expecting, even if you played it in the arcade. That's what we've discussed this many a time. But having a console was, one, better than anything else on the market. 2, a month or 2 or before you got it on the consoles, you're likely to see it in the arcade. So what better way to go check a game out? Because you didn't have YouTube, you couldn't go and look at videos of it.
Yeah.
You might get a passing mention in a games magazine, British one, I mean. So there was this, like, you go out and this is exactly what it was going to look like, and this is what it's going to play like. Hey, it's in a way it's good because you're not going to put in like 20 quid's worth of, but you get in there, you put a few pounds in or whatever, and you just getting a really good sense of what the game's like. But that was the magic of the Neo Geo. I mean, the thing is, it was a console of its time. It's yourself. A lot of people still like the Neo, or have perhaps only found it in the last year or two, and still think there's something special about games. And I totally agree with that. But that era, sort of the 90s really, I suppose, was a golden time for the console in the fact that it was current, and for the early part of that until the other consoles started to make up for it power-wise, it was so much better as well.
You mentioned that you used to compile reviews. Did you plan the editions of New Earth in advance, or have an idea in your head of next month I want to do this, and then the month after I want to do that?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, I tried to get. I can't remember exactly now, but I'd have a balance. So I didn't want to have obviously, as you know, there's a lot of one-on-one fighting games on the Neo Geo. That's what it was known for. But that was never my bias. Was more shoot 'em ups and platformy and that other types of games. But anyway, I tried to get a balance of not having all one type of game. Although I might do. So I did do a sports special and things like that. I tried to add, apart from initially it was just like reviews and news. Then I started looking at certain aspects of the game, like the background graphics, the sprites, the music, the sound effects. I had a little section for each of these. I all gave them like a amusing title. What was it? Well, they were called now, but each I gave them like a vaguely amusing title for each type, and so it wouldn't just be the review of that game. Then later on, it'd be let's look at the music on this album. What's it like, and which stages are particularly good, or so. I don't know where I got onto that, but basically, I just had to add on new bits, and I started putting in crosswords, quizzes, anything to just get. It was fun for me to do, and hopefully it added a little bit of variety to the people that read it. I mean, since New Earth sort of came back, I met Frazer and we started it up again and printed out loads of the old ones for people that wanted them. You know, people that have emailed me or messaged me or whatever on Twitter have all sort of mainly said it's just I liked it because it felt like there was actually something, somebody that's actually letting them know what was going on, because the average British person. So I suppose I had a little bit of a niche market. It was very small, but it was nice. So yeah, I mean that'll never come again, you know. It was a moment in time, but it was really pleasurable, and it was really nice when I sort of got back into the whole thing and met Frazer. And it was really nice that people remembered it so fondly, because I sort of not forgotten about it, but it was. I remember when I first Frazer got back in contact with her. I didn't know exactly where all my old New Earths were, because I've got all the originals in a binder. I was going to bring it up and show it to you, but I forgot. I didn't even know where they all were, It was like, ooh, hope they're up in the attic, because we've got, like most houses, attic, loads of crap up in there, sort of, and I had to get. We've got the back part of the attic where everything's just in piles of. I think I just had a bin bags full of stuff, and it took me 3 visits up there to find it. First, it's like, oh no, I've lost it, or let it go, or it's been whizzed, I think, oh no, all that effort. And people are actually interested in it. And anyway, thank goodness, I just found it in a pile with them, and there it was in a bin bag somewhere, which was great. So
I had this image of you going up there with a torch. It's pitch black, and in the corner, just Frazer just grabbing them like this.
yeah. What's he doing up here? It's like a little Frazer Gollum. But yeah, anyway. But it was nice to find it again, and actually started reading them now, because I hadn't seen them for years, because it ended at the end of the 90s, and only started sort of got reinterested 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know whether, because I started doing them again on sort of like digital versions, which could be printed out. I used to send out on emails. I think quite a few do. I think I did about just over a year's worth, and I suddenly realised that because it's not a current console, I'm not a collector, and really the Neo Geo market now is as much is more for collectors than it is for games. I'm not a collector.
Is there a standout edition or standout particular one that sticks in your mind, or that you really enjoyed making?
I couldn't say so really. I think probably ones with the games that I like the most, the games that really impressed me, Baseball Stars 2, Soccer Brawl, Metal Slug, Polestar. I even did a playthrough on Polestar. Can you imagine that? Trying to tell people about it in writing.
Terrible
nowadays. Yeah, but it's hard. No, I did. The only that I did one issue, which I can't remember which one it was. There was I decided to do a special treat for subscribers. So whoever many subscribers I had, 15, 20, whatever it was, I had a Neo Geo Freak. It was a back page full A4 advert for Metal Slug 2, I think. Can't remember exactly, but anyway, it's really nice full colour picture. So I colour photocopied it, however many times I needed, and all the subscribers, not the people who bought to the shops, got a colour front cover with that on it. That's the only one I did that on, which is a nice treat.
Yeah.
I actually sent one of my subscribers was in prison, would you believe?
Oh, really?
Yeah, but he couldn't play his Neo Geo in the prison, but he seemed happy to. Well, I sent it to his mum, and his mum used to take it to him. But he didn't start off in prison when he first started subscribing, but he did something stupid. But it was. But I can remember at the time him saying that they allowed you to have a PS PlayStation in prison at the time.
Oh, really?
But not a Neo Geo.
Not a Neo Geo.
No. I don't know if they supplied them.
All right, but
yeah. But no, I don't know how that. I didn't ask him. He just mentioned that he had a PlayStation. But yeah, odd days.
Brilliant. I just wait for Frazer now. I think it's around the time. It's not locked in your attic, is he?
He's trying to nick my originals.
Yeah.
Is that Frazer? It's Graham here. Just wondering if you were coming on to the Okay. I'll let him know you'll be on soon. Cheers, Fraser. Bye. You forgot you were right.
Ah, there we go.
Ah.
I get it. How you doing? Sorry about that. I knew I would completely forgot. So
Great.
apologies.
All right. How are you doing? Long time since I've seen you.
Just a bit. It must be. Well, it was pre-lockdown, wasn't it? Well, it must have been, Graham.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I think last time I saw you was when I came over and you bought a couple of Dreamcast games from me, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right.
Brilliant. Thanks for joining us. And we've just been talking about New Earth. And
Great.
got a quick question for you. When did you first come across New Earth? How did you hear about it? How did you see it?
So thinking back, it was either Raven Games or Loaded Consoles. Okay, so these are two pretty well-known, certainly in the case of Raven Games, well-known sort of retailers for import games. And I forget which year it would be. So we're talking early 90s, of course. And they sold both the Neo Geo Freak magazine. So that started in 95. So it was at least 95. And I also recall they sold the New Earth fanzine, basically. So I think I must have got my first copy from either one of those guys, either Loaded or Raven Games. Yeah, they sold various fanzines, PC Engine stuff, and of course in this case Neo Geo, as well as the more sort of official magazines such as Neo Geo Freak and so on. So yeah, that was kind of my introduction to it back then. So yeah, early 90s.
And how did you meet Graham?
Well, this was kind of two occasions really, under Graham over the years. So the first occasion, if I remember rightly, and Graham will correct me, I'm sure if I'm wrong on this, but I was part of one of the more well-known Neo Geo forums, neogeo.com basically, and I posted something on there about the fanzine. So I think it was really just to find out whether anybody got any copies or anybody remembered it back in the day. And obviously I remember it was Graham, so I just posted on there.
You've seen me, you come to my house before that, haven't you?
Yeah. So was it? Yeah, okay. So that was the first time. This was the second time. But back in the day, did we just correspond via the fanzine? How did we actually get in touch that first time?
I think I must have said I was looking to sell some bits and bobs. And I can't really remember you coming down. No, a few people did come down to meet me. And I think I might have been selling some, rather than games, it might have been some, periphery stuff or some advertising. But I think I was just getting rid of some stuff. And that's when we must have met, because I was living in Nelson at the time. And but when we got recontacted each other via that forum, then you mentioned it, and I vaguely remembered it. But yeah, it was on the forum. I think I didn't see your post on that forum until about a year or two after it had been on. I just sort of out of the blue, I thought I'll put in New Earth, see if anything comes up, And the forum came up with your thing, so I replied to it. About 2 years too late, really. But anyway, that's how we recontacted each other, wasn't it?
That was it. Yeah, I was thinking that was the first time, and then I came to meet you. But you're right. Yeah, I came across to see you in Nelson, and then I think when I posted that message, I was like, we had been in contact, but does anybody know where Graham? Because presumably you obviously moved since then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I came over. It might have been Neo Geo Freak magazines that I may have bought off you, or posters or something. I think, right, it was that sort of stuff. Yeah.
I did sell them, so yeah, it must have been. So yeah, those are I can remember a few pods popped over at the time. But as I was saying earlier, before I started the magazine, there used to be a little bit of like a swap scene. You could meet up with people and swap games, because they were so expensive that some people, once they'd played it to death, they wanted to buy another game. So you'd meet up in a car park or something and swap one game for another. I only did that 2 or 3 times. But
Big Max, Shady Hat.
Yeah. A bit like, yeah. I'm still doing it now, but without the games.
Yeah.
But yeah.
This is the thing,
Yeah.
right? A big collection of Neo Geo games back then was probably 10 games, right?
Yeah.
You know, that was a big collection because, yeah, they were expensive. So there was quite a scene in trading and swapping. For those people who, you know, had one, I mean, it was sometimes you had to go quite a distance to find somebody else who actually owned one back in the day. But anyway, that aside, yeah, there was quite a thing in exchanging and trading and things because, yeah, these were expensive games to own. So once you played it to death, you just sort of traded it on, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes you find yourself in unusual situations. I remember once I must have, if I'd phoned or this lad had contacted me and said he wanted to swap some games. So he didn't only do a 40-minute drive from where I live. So I thought I'd go down, and when I got there, he's about 14, this lad. So I'm about 30 then, and nobody else is in the house. I'm thinking, oh God, this is awkward. Then his mum turns up, and I'm thinking, oh Christ, what's he thinking? This 30-year-old bloke hanging around with a 14-year-old son. But anyway, nothing untoward happened, and we did some game exchanging. But it's funny because I can remember that lad used to ring me up every now and then for like information about stuff. You think, oh God, yeah. I don't mind people writing to me. I don't want people ringing me up. But anyway, that was the downside of things. But no, it was good. I was saying earlier that's what I liked about the newer. I had like people writing to me, and it was just nice to feel part of something because the mainstream magazines didn't do hardly anything back in the day, did they? Really? I don't think.
Well, you'd if there was anything. I mean, don't know if you're like me, but you'd go down to the magazine shop and you'd kind of open all the, whether it was CVG or whatever it was, and I'd just scour through really quickly to see whether there was anything on the Neo Geo, and if there was, I'd buy it, straight away. And for a while there was pretty regularly, and certainly in CVG, they would do 1 or 2 reviews every single month, and then it just started to tail off. They just sort of, I don't know whether there just wasn't the number of people buying the machines or whatever, or they just moved on to other things. And obviously the CD-based consoles came along in '94 or whatever, and I think interest probably just waned. But yeah, any information at all, that was often quite scarce at times.
Yeah, you used to get quite a few American magazines, though, didn't you, in the bigger newsagents like Games Pro, and they used to have a little bit more likely to have something Neo Geo in it, I found, than the British ones.
Yeah, EGM, Electronic Gaming Monthly, used to have pretty regular stuff. But what I found with those American magazines is I often thought the print quality and kind of the presentation wasn't that great, and some of the screenshots were really quite poor. I thought the British stuff was kind of a bit higher quality, really.
Do you remember there was a magazine that came out called Maximum? I think it was Maximum. And their first issue had a multi-page thing about Neo. I think Metal Slug was coming out, and it was like about 6 or 8 pages of Neo Geo. It was like never seen before. That was like really amazing. But yeah, that seemed like a real buzz at the time. It seems weird talking about it now, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that lasted about 8 issues at the end. 8 issues, I think, something like that. Pretty sure.
Nice. So you mentioned NeoGeo.com, and Graham, just before you came on, Graham mentioned about starting up for the second time with sort of the color editions. Can you remember the start of that and how that became a thing again?
Yeah, sure. So, well, after we got back in touch, we just sort of corresponded about it, and I think, Graham, you were quite interested in getting back into the Neo Geo.
Yeah, definitely.
So I guess we just arranged to kind of meet up, didn't we? And play some Neo Geo games, which we did. And then, I was quite interested in trying to, get hold of some of the older issues, really, because, like I say, I had a few back in the day. And then, Graham, you mentioned that you'd got kind of the master copy or the originals, and then I guess we just hatched a bit of a plan to sort of make those available. And so I just got in contact with other people and said, would they be interested? And then really it was a case of taking those originals and making some copies. And I think we both did. Well, you did a hell of a lot of scanning to kind of get in the format, and
then I
managed to print all of these. I can't remember how many sets, but it was a hell of a
60,
lot.
wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
I remember.
it was pretty sizable. And yeah, we did the print run for those people who were interested, and then essentially got a whole set of those, which was fantastic. And then I think it sort of piqued your interest again, Graham, in both getting another Neo Geo system, and obviously you kind of got the Neo SD, the multi-cart, so it enabled you to kind of play all of the games. And then you just started sort of putting pen to paper, so to speak, again, and starting to sort of publish a few more issues, kind of New Earth version 2, right?
Yeah, I think I did about a year's worth. I was just showing. I'll show you. I was just showing the. This is some. I've got printed copies of every one. Yeah, you can see that. That's the Neo baby Neo mini Neo. Remember that one? Anyway, I don't know if you actually bothered printing any out, did you, Frazer?
So I used to, for those people who are interested, we sent on kind of electronic versions, and then you kindly sent me paper copies. So I've got the full set of the old ones, and then prints of the new ones as well. So yeah, cool. full set.
So yeah, I mean, to be honest, it was Frazer that masterminded the reissue of the old ones, which I'm grateful. And actually, some people actually sent some money to go towards that Neo SD, didn't they? As well, which was really nice.
Yeah, I just sort of asked people if they were interested in sort of making a contribution. I think, we put it against that system. So, so that was kind of nice to give something back.
It was really nice, yeah.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
But yeah, I think shortly before we contacted, I started to, I think I got some of the games of PS4, started producing, sort of downloads of quite good copies. Like, was it Hamster that does them? I think it's Hamster. But yeah, there's a company that does them, and that's what got me back into it as much as before I recontacted you. I think that just to see these games again on a big screen, looking good, and pretty much as I remembered them, because they'd actually bothered to do a Japanese version and an English version, and I thought they were really well done and ridiculously cheap as well. That's £7 or something each. But yeah, that's what started me thinking about it again. And then obviously getting that Neo SD was amazing, because suddenly there's loads of games I'd never actually seen, either because I couldn't get hold of them at the time, or they came out after I'd finished, really. But yeah, Prehistoric Isle 2 and things like that, really good games that I've enjoyed playing. But I haven't managed to keep up with because you've got every single cartridge ever produced, haven't you, for the Neo Geo?
Yeah, so over the years I managed to collect. My original goal was to collect all of the original home console releases, so all of the Japanese, all of 117 of those, and then I sort of went into sort of the MVS only releases and got those, and then I started to buy the NG Dev Team games. I've just kept buying those as they've been released, and basically everything in between. So.
Have you got all the CDs as well?
So I've got all of the games that were released on CD only. So I haven't gone down the road of getting them all on Neo CD as well. So I've kind of kept it a little bit sensible to some degree. But I don't know. There's about 190 home carts or something like that I've got in various kind of forms, and I've still got my original English set of the first 10 or so games, which I never sold, because at one point I had quite a large English version set back in, let's think, around about 2000, 2001. I had maybe 85, I think, English games, and those are now worth kind of silly money. But at the time, I just kind of elected to sell those and invest the money elsewhere, and then started buying back the games probably about 2 years later, in about 2004, 2005. And then thought, well, I'll just concentrate on the Japanese kind of set, but just because it's easier to do, and not all the games were released in the West anyway. So the Japanese set is the kind of true original kind of set, I suppose.
I remember when I was doing the fanzine, I had a Neo Geo CD and a CDZ, but the CDZ was Japanese. So if I played it on the CD, which was the UK, you got a different version than if you played it with the game's same disc, but the console read it for its country. So if you played it, sometimes you get different intros, you know, slightly. I remember sometimes you get more animation on the boobs and things like that on the Japanese one than you did on the UK, which is a bit bizarre. But yeah, and also things like blood. But yeah, that was interesting for me to see. You know, probably play on the British one first and then try out the Japanese, and yeah, you get little extra bits quite often from the same disc, which was interesting.
Yeah, the censorship and things like that. And just sometimes kind of subtle differences, I suppose. But yeah, just two different versions. I guess on the cartridge thing, that made it quite unique actually. That you had, you had game cartridges that were kind of coded, and so the thing that mattered was kind of the hardware that you selected, and then that kind of switched to effectively the games were universal in that respect. And then they even had the MVS sort of code within the games as well, which is quite entertaining, because I think when you came across Graham, we ended up through the Unibios playing the Viewpoint 2-player simultaneous.
Yeah,
a lot of people don't know about. So you can get two players on the screen at the same time, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I remember back in the day thinking, wouldn't it be amazing if you could play that as a 2-player? I had no idea that there was a possibility, But I think it was. I can remember us playing it, but I was terribly out of practice, and yeah, I remember dying very quickly.
I imagine if one person was better than the other, it'd be very frustrating for them.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a tough game as well. But yeah, that's definitely one of Viewpoint. I can remember that was back in the day. Yeah, it was a huge jump in price. When it first came out in the UK, it was £220. If you can imagine, you're talking like, I don't know when it came out, 93 was it? And that's all the other games were sort of 100 and something, and then this came out. I think it's very limited amount came to this country, £220. And I played it in the arcade. And I really wanted it. I can't justify £220. I waited a couple of 3 months, and then another lot came out at 180. So I thought, I'll jump now, but and get it. But it seemed, when you look at it now, it's quite a small game. Is it about 68 meg or something like that? It's really dinky. But yeah, it was a.
So it came out around 93.
I think Viewpoint was 93. What do you think, Fraser?
From memory, late 92, possibly early 93. I think late 92, actually.
Yeah,
the graphics look like a much later game.
Yeah, it was very different for a Neo Geo, because it was done. Was it by Sammy? And they weren't a regular programmer for the Neo Geo. But yeah, it was just so different. The music was different. The graphics were different. It was, and I think they just thought, right, well, I'm guessing back in those days there weren't that many Neo Geo cartridge consoles in the UK, a few hundred, I guess. So they put the price right up. But
I seem to remember November '92 for some reason, but I never really understood, because I read it first in CVG about Viewpoint, and it was like a preview, but it did mention about it being limited edition. But yeah, I never really kind of got my head around that, because it never really seemed to be limited edition. No. Really. And and there is a lot of copy. I know it's considered probably rare now, but I mean, there were plenty of copies going around, both and in the UK and Europe and the USA. So I don't know whether it was just a bit of a marketing ploy.
Yeah.
To be honest, but yeah, I remember at 225 quid, it was a big jump up in price, and that's a pretty hefty price tag back in early 90s.
Definitely, but that was I was saying earlier that one of the best things about the Neo back in the day was you could go to the arcade and play it first, because it always came out in the arcade 2 or 3 months before the cartridge did it. So this brilliant preview, because you didn't have YouTube or out like that, so you were there playing, and that was a big hook on Viewpoint, because I can remember looking over in an arcade scene. What the hell's that? Get it on it. Neo Geo, wow, it's brilliant. I just really wanted it, and then £225. Oh my god, I don't know how much I was earning at the time, but it seemed like a lot of money. But I wanted it, and 180 was a lot as well. But you're just thinking, you wanted it, didn't you? Really, it was had to own type of situation. Even back in the day, I can remember on certain consoles you could only play that country's games on them. Nowadays everything's multinational, isn't it? But back in the early PlayStation days, you had to get some sort of gizmo to play a Japanese game on the console.
I was spending hours
Yeah.
doing that with the
Yeah.
Dreamcast.
But now it's fairly easy to think that, you know, you wanted a Neo Geo game, you had to pay for it, and you had to be one of the few that got it because there weren't that many around. But yeah, but I suppose that again, partly it already had the preview on the arcade too. You had a console which is better than anything else at the time by a long way, so it did make you feel good to own them and play them, I think.
Yeah, it was just a massive leap beyond, you know, what was the nearest thing at the time. So at that time, Mega Drive, you know, and I
SNES.
suppose the SNES started to come in, of course, when it finally got a UK release, which was a fair way after, as was the Mega Drive, fair way after the kind of the Japanese launch. But yeah, I mean, it was an arcade machine, wasn't it? And yeah, there was no kind of compromises there. And yeah, you just reminded me of that kind of, you know, having to buy converters and things. If you had a Mega Drive, you know, you might be able to get a game which took 2 years or whatever before it came out in the UK, which is just incredible to think about now.
And
but yeah, yeah, absolutely.
On the Mega Drive, if you bought a British one, you had borders. But if you bought a Japanese one, I can remember first seeing the Japanese game and thinking, wow, that looks good. Yeah, there's no borders. Yeah, but didn't have any of that with a Neo, thank goodness. But
well, my first one did. My first one, I had a PAL Neo Geo, the first system, and so it did have the letterbox. And I remember 2 games, and I think this is still correct now, that it's Baseball Stars and Ghost Pilots, and if you play those on a PAL machine, you get corrupted graphics in the bands at the very top and possibly at the bottom. And if you run them on a PAL machine, they're just like, it just wasn't very good. And so yeah, it letterboxed it. And anyway, I only ever made that mistake once, and then all the systems after that have been NTSC.
Oh, no.
Yeah, those were the days. But yeah, it was a golden era, was it not?
You also just reminded me there, Great, of when I did have a Mega Drive, borrowing games from people at school, and I forget the lad's name, and well, if he does listen to this, it's apologies from me, but I remember borrowing a copy of, I think it might have been Moonwalker, and took that home, and it was a Japanese version. I tried to get it into the English machine, it wouldn't work at all. So I took a file to his cartridge.
Oh, no.
Filed the cartridge down all around the edges, so it would go in. And yeah, so I played that, and then reluctantly handed his file down cartridge back to him.
What a friend!
Oh, terrible! I'm terrible, yeah. But yeah, I did do that.
I remember a lot of people used to just like cut the bit around the port in the Mega Drive because that's all the difference was. The Japanese cartridges were bigger, and so they just used to cut there. But later on, I can remember with the Saturn, I had a machine and it had 60 hertz, 50 hertz, and switched it back, and it had 3 different numbers for Japan, America, and the UK, and you had to put it on the right one for the game. It was real faffy. But why, I don't know, because I was always thinking, well, that isn't really all they're worried about. People copying games, but most people just wanted to buy Japanese games. But then it took them years to work that out, didn't it? Because it wasn't until PlayStation 3, was it, when they all became multinational sort of games where you could play anything on anything like you can now. But yeah, that's not Neo Geo, is it?
What did your friend do when you handed it back to him? Did he notice at first?
Yeah, he wasn't very happy. Thankfully, he wasn't bigger than me, and didn't take it out. Didn't take it out me, and long time ago. But I kind of got away with it, which is feeling guilty about it now. It's the first time I thought about that in years. But there we go. Hey ho. I wonder whether that cartridge still exists somewhere. People looking at their copy, see it kind of filed down all around the edges.
Is there any memorable or standout editions from New Earth that you can remember, Frazer? Or is there anything you remember seeing and perhaps a game was in there that you hadn't seen before?
Ooh, good question. I mean, I think the one that always caught the attention, there was one where Graham did a special cover, right? There was a colour cover, but that was for the for Metal Slug 2, I think.
It was, yeah.
So there's that, and then of course, it's probably no secret that one of Graham's favourite games is Soccer Brawl, And so I think whenever there's an opportunity to get a fair bit of coverage on Soccer Brawl, Graham would take that opportunity. But I think it's kind of the fact that often I think in the games magazines, there were times when they would be critical of games, but a lot of the times, they scored some games quite highly that, I don't know, in retrospect, you just think, I'm not so sure that was an authentic review. Whereas actually, Graham, you'd just tell it like it is, right? If you didn't like it, you wouldn't hold back. And
True.
Because, we were, at the end of the day, people didn't, as we said before, there isn't a lot of information there. And if you had £120 in your hand and you were just trying to work out what to buy, really quite helpful to have some honest reviews and know where to sort of place that hard-earned cash. So I think just generally speaking, I think it was good to get actually some authentic reviews without any pressure perhaps from distributors and things like that, which was good to see, really.
Do you remember? I think I showed it to you when I came across. There was one of the British magazines had done a bit of a dismissive thing about Neo Geo, so I wrote into them telling them off, because they said it was all like, they said it was all one-on-one fighting games, and it was only for rich kids and all this sort of thing. So I just wrote and saying, actually, there was 24 shoot 'em ups and so a whole list of non-shoot fighting games, and I had to work hard to earn enough money to buy those games. And they printed it. They printed it in a little reply, and they put it from the neo-Nazi. That's what's got funny. I can't remember. I kept it somewhere. It's just a little thing, response to letters. But it's quite funny. At least they printed it anyway.
Yeah, and you used to put things in there about if there was a distributor or if there was any. Yeah, it wasn't just about the game. You'd add a bit more to it, really. And of course, you encouraged other people to sort of contribute as well, right? So you get sort of contributions from others, which was good. Pre-internet days, it was encouraging other people to sort of contribute as well to it.
Yeah, I used to get some nice hand-drawn artwork and stuff like that occasionally, which I used as soon as I could, really, because I appreciated people sending it in. In fact, even on the more recent one, the colour one, which I did recently. There was a guy in America sent me a really good review of one of the Metal Slugs games, which I published. Yeah, he really put some thought into it. I was impressed. It was good. But yeah, it's amazing how many people now still really rate the console and see it as being, not just in a nostalgic way, but they see it as the game's just being really good. And I still say, I still think, even though they're known for one-on-one games, I still think they were SNK themselves, when they were actually programming, they did some brilliant, some really good sports games. They weren't trying to be accurate representations of a sports game. They're trying to be arcade versions, so something you could get into relatively quickly. And there's no point putting like FIFA on an arcade machine. It just wouldn't work. You've got to gear it towards in there. Wham bam, thank you, man. Try and get back as quick as you can. Put a few more coins in to play a bit more, and I think they were brilliant. Even though Soccer Brawl, as we all know, is my favourite game, but I still think Baseball Stars 2 is probably the best sports game I've ever played. I just think it's so well done. It was an arcade machine. As you said earlier, half an hour. Most adults, unless they're out of work and haven't got any other interests, they haven't really got hours on end to sit there trying to, as you say, find some hidden dungeon somewhere or work their way through it. Get on there, have a really good blast. And when you play well, it's a real buzz, isn't it? I think it was yesterday. There's a really good shoot 'em up called Shikondo, which I don't know if it's on the PS4 and Nintendo Switch. It's a really good game. It's a real old-fashioned 2D Japanesey, a bit mad shoot 'em up, and there's some really creepy-looking characters. The end level is like these weird witchy sort of women that start off looking
Korean.
like.
I think it's Korean.
Is it Korean? Yeah. Korean. Same sort of thing, but they start off looking like, oh, she's a bit tasty. Next minute, that's this horrible demonic sort of creature in Christ. But the whole thing is just really well done. And I just picked it up and played about 4 levels with them. But and when you do well and you feel, it's just a real buzz. And that's the sort of thing a lot of people, I'm sure, want. Yeah, I'm sure. Like, I'm not saying that, you know, people that want to play for 5 hours at a time, okay, but that's not me. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't want to play for 5 hours at a time. You know, they want to play, you know, less than an hour usually, I would imagine.
There used to be a section in New Earth called sequels. Are there any sequels you wish would have come out that never came out? Both of you.
Soccer Brawl 2, of course.
The definitive edition.
Yeah. Yeah. Viewpoint 2 would have been good.
There's a Hyper
Yeah.
Ball that's just come out.
Yeah.
I was thinking view stuff, to be honest, and I continuously go back to like NAM 75, and I know some people don't rate it, but I just think it's great. And I think if you play it enough, you get to a point where I think people struggle to sort of do the targeting and look at the stuff that's coming to hit you.
Yeah.
But if you play it enough, you just get into a sort of way of playing where everything it's just you play it on autopilot. A sequel to that. Magician Lord 2 is another one, which was sort of mentioned. Yeah, it was mentioned in terms of Neo Geo Pocket, and so there's some references to that, and vaguely recall sort of seeing sort of screenshots and things. So it was certainly kind of rumored anyway. But on the Pocket, but I would like to have seen a Magician Lord 2 on the home system as well. So yeah, just those would be would be some of my picks.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I think you were talking about doing things. I think Shock Troopers got a little element of that as well, isn't it? Because you have to do a lot of rolling to get out of tight corners whilst aiming your weapon, and it's a little bit more complicated than the fact that you've got to. If you have to know whether you're going to strafe or whether you're going to aim your shot, move, and as you say, rolling to avoid things. That's got that sort of thing. But that had a sequel, but it wasn't as good.
No,
all they did was with Shock Troopers 2. The Shock Troopers 2, they made it better looking, but they didn't. The gameplay's not as good. So it's a bit like
bit of a disappointment, wasn't it? I mean, it's still good. But Shock Troopers is just far the better game, and strangely never got a home release. And it's just one of those strange things that you just wonder what happened at SNK at the time. Why didn't they release that on a home system? Because presumably it would have been reasonably popular, but they elected to release the second one, which is odd.
Yeah, while you were away, Simon, we were talking about Neo Geo games that are still to come out, and one was a shoot 'em up in Australia.
Oh, apparently. Really? Oh, that's interesting.
Is it like a vertical, horizontal, or what is it?
Vertical, yeah. So vertical shoot 'em up.
Sort of a last resort type of thing.
Well, yeah. Hold on. Can you see the link that I've just given you guys? It's in the chat. If you have a look in there, you'll.
I mean, I would normally share screen, but because my signal's so bad already, I don't think it's worth doing. Ordinarily, I would. Oh, I see. Yes, that's. Oh, and it's 2-player as well.
Project Neon. So I think they've been working on it for a good 18 months or so at least. And as I say, they keep doing sort of iterations, and it seems to improve with every sort of clip that they show. So that's one to watch, I think. And as I say, then looking forward to Xeno Crisis when that comes out pretty soon, which will be great.
It's a good game.
Lots of reviews. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
I've played it. It's really good. I did a silly review on the channel about it, but it is a really good game.
So I'm a big
and which has kind of got similar vibes, right? It's very similar in terms of its style. Smack TV is a great arcade game and good port on the Super Famicom as well.
Nice.
What game were we talking about then? I missed it. Sorry, I was looking at that video. Oh yeah. It looks interesting. They had a really good idea to start with, didn't they? Having a home game to play, arcade games at home. Because was it originally they wanted to rent it, didn't they? It was just they thought they were going to rent it rather than people buy it, didn't they? I seem to remember reading somewhere.
Yeah, we've been doing a bit of research around that actually with a couple of kind of colleagues and who worked with me on the Neo Geo Visual History book with Bitmap Books. So Brian Hargrove and Massey Macri, and yeah, we've been digging into some of the old Game Machine magazines. Well, it's not really a magazine; it was kind of an industry paper in many respects for the arcade industry, which was published in Japan, but they often had a sort of an overseas section as well. So we've been kind of digging into that, and of course we did the research on the early years as part of the book with Sam Dyer at Bitmap Books, and yeah, those early years are kind of really fascinating for me because it was the concept was very much, we got this arcade machine which you can put interchangeable games in it, which was pretty unique because most people were buying dedicated cabinets which were expensive and took up a lot of room, and that was pretty groundbreaking. And then to partner it with this rental system, home console rental system, and so when they went live with that in sort of April 1990, that was the concept. But I think what they quickly found was the fact that people were interested to buy it and not just necessarily rent it, and so it was only a few months later when you start to see the rental tag, if you like, on those early games disappear, and you see sort of mail order lists where people could buy the games. And I think the other thing was just the MVS or the arcade stuff was such a runaway success that they started to focus their efforts there because clearly there was great demand. And so whilst they shifted a lot of the home console systems in that first year, one of the barriers was the fact that the games were too high, priced high. I mean, they were more expensive. They were sort of £200 a game, never mind 120 when it first sort of came out, because of this concept of rental. And then what you see towards the end of 1990 is SNK concentrate even more so on the arcade, because they created a one-slot board, a jammer sort of one-slot board that operators could then just stick in existing cabinets. So they didn't have to buy the whole SNK machine, if you like. They could just take this sort of board and put that into an existing machine. And at the time, we were releasing games on the home system and the MVS arcade at the same time. But towards the end of 1990, in fact, at the end of 1990 and the start of 91, they just stopped releasing home console games and just concentrated on MVS. So for about 6 months, the new releases, King of the Monsters, Tengoku, and things like that, only came out on the arcade. And it wasn't until the 1st of July, which in 1991, which is kind of the price drop or relaunch, when they then sort of dropped the price on the home console and the games, repackaged them in carton boxes, if you've seen some of those. And then go back into this sort of cycle of releasing games at the same time. But as we know, they quickly reverted back to the plastic boxes as well. And so it seems to me that there was this pause of rethinking the strategy, focusing their efforts on the arcade, realizing that actually to really get market share, if you could call it that, for the home console, they needed to drop the price and sort of pivot in terms of their strategy. So yeah, that sort of early years is quite interesting, and I think they had a runaway success on the MVS. That I think the home console wasn't a massive success actually to the end of 91, and then they realised that they needed to sort of price drop and take a bit of a different approach with that. So yeah, lots of sort of twists and turns in those early years, and I think that's what I find quite interesting about those kind of early days of SNK, or rather early days of Neo Geo.
So across both the arcade versions and the home versions, including the CD, for both of you, what would you say your individual top 10 Neo Geo games?
Oh, blimey.
Ooh, wow, top 10.
That's hard.
Okay.
That's hard. Who's going first?
Go on, Frazer,
I
because
don't know.
Graham can go after.
I don't know. I mean, I'll reel some off, and I don't know if we'll get this to 10, but I've mentioned a couple that I'm a big fan of anyway, which was NAM 45 and Magician Lord. I have to agree with Graham that Baseball Stars and Baseball Stars 2 are both excellent. Weirdly, I kind of like the first one, and that's just because me and a good friend of mine, actually my next door neighbour back in the day, just played that to death. And so I've kind of got a bit of an affinity for baseball, even though actually Baseball Stars 2 is arguably the better game. But anyway, so Baseball Stars and Baseball Stars 2. It would have to be Polestar, Viewpoint, Fighters, Mark of the Wolves, as I say, King of Fighters 98. And I always struggled to kind of pick between Metal Slug and Metal Slug 3. Both of those are fantastic games. Yeah,
No
both
Joe
of those are
Success.
games. Sorry, what was that, Simon?
No Joe Success then.
Yeah, no, sorry, yeah. That was number 11. No, it wasn't. No, Legend of Success Joe is not in the top 10. not even in the top 50. Yeah, I'm afraid. And then the other, I suppose, special honourable mentions would be Shock Troopers and Last Blade. Actually, in fact, I'd prefer Last Blade over Last Blade 2. Yeah, that's probably it. I could go on, but I'll keep it to those.
Brilliant. Go on, Graham.
Well, I'll do like Fighters, Kabuki Clash, Samurai Showdown 4, Last Blade again. I think the first one was brilliant. I really like Matrimony. I think I'll put that in as top fighter. And Mark of the Wolves is just fantastic. I mean, I'm not a Fatal Fury fan. It's probably my least favourite. Well, after Fighting, probably my least favourite series. But Fatal Fury, I never got into Fatal Fury. And then I got the Neo SD, and I'd never played Mark of the Wolves. I think I'd dropped out. And I put that on. I thought, this is a phenomenal game. It looks brilliant. It plays really well. Anyway, so yeah, kind of the top. Those are my favourite shoot 'em ups. Definitely Polestar, Viewpoint are the best two. Easy. Perhaps Blazing Star is good, but not as good as Polestar. It was like the poorer brother. But yeah, sports games, we all know those. Baseball Stars 2, Soccer Brawl. Again, honourable mention, Street Hoop. That's just a really good, fun game. I mean, it's got no connection with reality, but it's just such a good game. Loads of fun, great music. You can really have a good blast on it. Just trying to think in case I've missed anything on the sports games.
Probably Neo Turf Masters or Big Tournament Golf, as it's known in.
Oh yeah, big. Yeah, I really like. I remember when I came across that. It was the dingiest, shittiest little arcade. Had about six machines in there. It was in Tunbridge or somewhere like Tunbridge Wells, one of the places. I'm just wondering. I saw it's all seedy-looking gap. I thought, blimey. Oh, I could see some arcades. There was a couple of sit-down ones. Yeah, like a little bench. And go on then. So I went in there, and there it was. Neo Turf Masters. Oh, it looks so good because I really like Top Players Golf, which was a 1990 game, I believe. That was good, but this was, it was so glamorous. It just looked great. And Neo Turf Masters in there. But yeah, I keep forgetting that. Metal Slug, I think one's my favourite, and it's one of the best games of all time on any console, no doubt about that.
No one's mentioned Windjammers.
Windjammers, yeah, that's a good game. Yeah, that's the trouble when you asked me this before, and then I'd go away and I think, oh shit, I didn't mention that one. But yeah, Windjammers. Oh, actually, I tried playing that recently. God, I was so out of practice. I was useless.
Yeah, it's tough.
You have to tune into it. Once you tuned into it and you're sliding and everything, it's great. But if you're not doing it,
you can get the second one when it comes out on Switch. Now you got a Switch.
Yeah, I bought a Switch. My wife bought a Switch. She wanted it for a particular game, and so I said, I've downloaded some shoot 'em ups already. But anyway, so yeah, I think I've covered most of my favourites, but there's always something you forget. But yeah, the Neo is a lot of really good games on it. So how many games in all, including all different versions? Is it about 200? Is it, Fraser?
So 117 official releases, and off the top of my head, a further 27, I think, that were MVS only.
So
yeah.
I bet at least 50% of them are really good. You know what I mean? If you look at all the, say, 1,000 games released on the Mega Drive, I bet 500 of them aren't good. You know what I mean? I think the percentage of good was high on the Neo Geo. Yeah, it did have some rubbish, but I mean, that's just, you can't help it, can you? But I think the percentage of really good games was good. But I still think the golden era for me is sort of 92 to sort of 96, sort of that period when SNK was still doing games. Because you got the feeling, and then they sort of gave up and just let NASCAR and Saurus and Visco do the games. You know what I mean? I just think that little middle period was just really brilliant. Yes.
Yeah, it's 148 of the games that were only released on the MVS. So if you just say MVS games only, 148, home console games, 117. It's just nearly 100, I think, that were only released or games that were released on the CD. So it's yeah, people talk about 150 in terms of kind of overall titles. But yeah, I think you're right. I think you know, actually, if you wanted to get every single game on the Super Famicom, which would be something like, I don't know, 2,000 games or something like that, possibly more, you know, a lot of those wouldn't be great. You know, a lot of those would be pretty poor. And I think that, yeah, the Neo does pretty well in terms of its library. There are some, as we talked about, that are definitely below par. But overall, actually, I think it does pretty well.
So if someone wants to get hold of copies of New Earth, where can they find these?
They can't really. Can they? Oh, is that archive place still doing it?
Yeah, that's right. There is an archive. Hold on.
Because when last time I looked, which was a year or two ago, they'd only done about 4 or 5 of the issues. I know they were good to add it.
And pop it in the description.
Yeah. How to print archive.
Yeah, the How to print archive. And while you're there, Ray Luca on Twitter asks, probably more specifically for Frazer, because it's to do with the sort of storage and how it's read. He's saying, can these be made available for iOS bookstore for iPad?
Wow. Pass. I think I wouldn't know.
The question is, how much time and money do you have?
So let's think. I mean, it's got up to volume 2, issue 15 here on the outofprintarchive.com. So is that the one that you looked at, Graham? Is that the one that you were looking at?
Yeah, the last issue which I produced of the originals is volume 4, issue 2. So, but it's not like 12 per volume. I can't remember what made me go from one volume to another. It's not very you know, regimented way I've done it. But I can't remember why. I think with the first one, I think it was because I gave up after volume 1. I stopped for about 2 or 3 months, and then because I get a bit fed up, and then I suddenly thought, oh, I really miss it, so I started up again. That was so I then started volume 2, and I'm guessing I just sort of used how many there were in volume 1 as to. Yeah, the last one was December '98, and that's it. The very last issue of the original. You can see that the original. Actually got some artwork on it. A nice King of Fighters thingy. Can you see that?
Yeah.
There he is. Sorry. I suppose if people wanted the newer one, well, I could email things to people, but my email's a bit dodgy when it comes to sending big files. I don't know why. But you know, when I was sending out the 60-odd ones via email, you know, you put all the different. Sometimes it just wouldn't work. I had to send off so many at a time, or I think one I had to send it half an issue at a time. That's just my useless email. But I don't mind sending stuff to people by email, you know. But, if they want to, they'll have to print it off themselves, though, won't they?
I was just going to say, there's 30 copies or issues on that the out of print archive. So it's
not bad, is it?
Yeah, it's a good place to start.
Yeah, I think there's about 50 in all, so it's over half. Something like that. It's approaching 50, wasn't it? Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was always surprised that when Frazer sort of got it all arranged, how many pleasant comments I got from people about it. You know, how much they'd enjoyed it back in the day, which was, you know, really nice to hear. Because it's like, I suppose it was like for 20 years, I hadn't even given it a lot of thought, apart from thinking, yeah, I'd enjoyed doing it. So it was rather strange to go back in time and start looking at it all again and thinking, oh, I could do some more of that, you know. It's a bygone thing, really. You know, you can't. The fanzine's not going to sell now because you're not going to. I didn't sell them. It's right. It's quite strange because I think you said earlier, Frazer, that Raven Games was selling them because I gave them to them free. They were supposed to send them out with games. No, I wasn't. my idea was I sent them so many copies, and they just sent them out with people that ordered Neo Geo games. That's what I thought they were doing. I didn't realise they were selling them. Yeah. But no big deal.
I'm pretty sure they were £1.50 each or something like that.
It's a bit cheap.
Maybe a bit
cheeky,
more.
really.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should have. If they were going to charge, it should have been like 50 or 40. I think not £1. But yeah, anyway, it's all in the past. But I just think, yeah, it's a bit cheeky, really. I thought the understanding was they were just going to distribute them with people that bought Neo Geo games or people that came in and were showing an interest. But yeah, I think I think somebody else mentioned buying, or perhaps it was you mentioned it before. But
I'm sure there's a legal grey area there.
Well, they're all out of business now, aren't they?
Yeah. If anyone wants to find you, where can they find you on the interwebs or Twitter?
I've got a Twitter page, but I can't remember what it's called. Yeah, no, I can't remember.
It's not at Graham Pike. It's
no, it's kind of under somebody else's name.
Yeah,
but I can't remember what it is. But you could post that if you want to. My Twitter
yeah,
page.
I'll put it in the description. How about you, Frazer?
Yeah, so you can find me at Neo Geo Collector or at Frazer_HX. So there's both of my kind of Twitter handles there. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you both very much for your time, and we'll see you again soon. Like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you soon.
Cheers.
Bye.
Take care. Bye. See you later.
Bye.